The garage was my sanctuary. While the rest of the world saw a cluttered mess of circuit boards, soldering irons, and half-finished prototypes, I saw possibility. My name is Michael Chen, and for the past 5 years, I've spent every spare moment in this garage working on what my family lovingly called my bizarre obsession. Mike. My sister Sarah's voice cut through my concentration. Mom says dinner's ready, and please don't tell me you're still working on that thing. I carefully set down my soldering iron, looking at the device that had consumed thousands of hours of my life. It didn't look like much, just a small black box with a few blinking LEDs and a mess of wires. But I knew it could change everything. It's not just that thing, I replied, trying to keep the defensiveness out of my voice. It's going to revolutionize how artificial intelligence processes natural language. The applications could be endless. Sarah rolled her eyes, a gesture I'd grown painfully familiar with. Right, just like your self-adjusting tennis racket was going to revolutionize sports, or that smart garden system that flooded Mom's prized petunias. I winced at the memories. Yes, I'd have my share of failures, but this was different. This time I knew I was onto something big. At the dinner table, my father barely looked up from his phone as I tried to explain my latest breakthrough. He was a successful software engineer at a major tech company, which somehow made his dismissal sting even more. Neural network optimization through quantum-inspired algorithms, I explained, pushing my rice around the plate. It could make AI language processing 1,000 times more efficient. Honey, my mother interrupted gently, maybe it's time to focus on something more practical. The community college is still accepting applications for their 8 program. I have a degree in computer science from Stanford, I reminded her. I'm not looking for a career change. I'm trying to create something revolutionary. A degree you're wasting in that garage, my father finally spoke, his voice carrying the weight of years of disappointment. Your cousin Jerry just got promoted to senior developer at Amazon. He's buying a house in Seattle. Meanwhile, you're burning through your savings on what? A black box that supposedly talks to computers. I pushed my chair back, appetite gone. It doesn't talk to computers. It fundamentally changes how AI systems process and understand human language. The potential applications in everything from healthcare to education are. Enough. My father's hand slammed on the table, making the dishes rattle. You're 32 years old, Michael. When are you going to grow up and join the real world? I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. The real world is changing, Dad. Someone has to be crazy enough to push the boundaries, to try things that haven't been done before. And you think that someone is you? Sarah scoffed. The guy who couldn't even hold down a regular programming job. I left without responding, retreating to my garage sanctuary. They didn't understand. Couldn't understand. How could I explain that every failed prototype, every setback, every mockery-filled family dinner was just pushing me closer to a breakthrough? My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my tools again. The truth was, my savings were running dangerously low. I'd been living off my initial success, a small app I'd sold right out of college, but that money wouldn't last forever. The pressure to give up, to conform to their version of success, was mounting. But as I looked at my creation, watching the LEDs pulse with a steady rhythm, I knew I couldn't stop. Not now, not when I was so close. What my family didn't know was that I'd already achieved something unprecedented. The initial tests showed performance improvements that shouldn't have been possible according to current theoretical frameworks. I just needed more time, more resources, more. A notification popped up on my laptop. Another rejection email from a potential investor. This one hadn't even bothered with a meeting, just a form letter saying they weren't interested in speculative AI projects from independent developers. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling of my garage. Tomorrow, I had one last pitch meeting scheduled. A small tech investment firm I'd never heard of, probably another dead end. But I had to try, because if this didn't work, my father's words echoed in my head. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just wasting my life, chasing an impossible dream while the real world passed me by. I shook my head, pushing the doubt away. No, I knew what I had created. I knew what it could do. Someone just needed to give me a chance to prove it. Little did I know, that chance was coming sooner than I thought, and from a direction I never could have predicted. But first, I had to survive another day of being the family disappointment. The crazy inventor who couldn't let go of his dreams. I turned back to my work, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of coding and testing. Outside my garage sanctuary, the world might doubt me, mock me, dismiss me. But in here, surrounded by the pieces of my vision, I was building the future, even if I was the only one who could see it. The next morning, I straightened my tie in the mirror, trying to look like someone worth investing millions in. The suit I wore was the same one I bought for my cousin Jerry's wedding 3 years ago, the last time I needed to dress formally. It felt tight around the shoulders now, probably from all those hours hunched over my workbench. Another pitch meeting. My mother's voice carried a mix of concern and resignation. She stood in the doorway of the bathroom, watching me struggle with my tie. You know, the software company where your father works is always hiring. They have great benefits. A 401. Mom, I cut her off gently. I appreciate the thought, but this is different. This meeting today, I have a good feeling about it. She sighed, stepping forward to fix my crooked tie. You always have a good feeling, Michael. Remember last month? That venture capital firm in San Francisco. I did remember. The senior partner had actually laughed out loud when I explained my technology. Son, he'd said, wiping tears from his eyes, if what you're claiming was possible, Google or Microsoft would have done it already. You really think you've solved something in your garage that their entire research teams couldn't. But today was different. It had to be. The investment firm's office was in a modest building on the outskirts of Silicon Valley, not exactly the gleaming skyscraper I'd imagined. The receptionist directed me to a small conference room where a single person waited, a woman about my age, dressed in a sharp business suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Mr. Chen, she extended her hand. I'm Julia Hayes. Thank you for coming in today. I set up my laptop and the prototype, hands slightly shaking. Before I begin, I should mention that what you're about to see goes beyond current theoretical frameworks for AI language processing. I know it might seem. Show me, she interrupted, her expression unreadable. I took a deep breath and began the demonstration. As I explained the technical architecture, Julia's face remained impassive. But when I ran the first test, showing how my system could process and understand complex linguistic patterns thousands of times faster than existing solutions, something changed in her eyes. Run that again, she said quietly. I did. This time, I added a more complex language sample, something that would stump most AI systems. My prototype processed it flawlessly. Julia leaned forward, her professional detachment cracking slightly. How did you solve the contextual ambiguity problem? I blinked, surprised. Most investors' eyes glazed over when I got into technical details. You understand the underlying challenges? A small smile played at her lips. Mr. Chen, there's something you should know about this firm. We're not typical investors. We're actually a subsidiary of. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her eyes widened. I'm sorry, but we need to pause. Something's come up. She stood abruptly. Please wait here. Before I could respond, she was gone, leaving me alone in the conference room. Minutes ticked by. Through the glass walls, I could see people hurrying past, an unusual energy in their movements. What was going on? After what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes, the door opened again. But it wasn't Julia who walked in. The man who entered was tall, slim, with silver hair and rimless glasses. He wore jeans and a simple black sweater, but something about his presence made me stand up automatically. He looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place him. Mr. Chen, he smiled, extending his hand. I apologize for the interruption. I'm Eric Schmidt. My knees went weak. Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, current technical advisor to Alphabet's board. When Julia sent me the preliminary data from your demonstration, I had to see for myself. He gestured to my prototype. Would you mind showing me exactly how your system handles semantic analysis? What followed was the most intense technical discussion of my life. Eric didn't just understand my technology, he grasped its implications instantly. Every question he asked showed a deep understanding of not just where AI was, but where it needed to go. The quantum-inspired processing architecture, he mused, examining my prototype. That's the key innovation, isn't it? But how did you overcome the coherence issues? I pulled up the technical specifications on my laptop, explaining the breakthrough that had come to me one sleepless night 6 months ago. Eric's eyes lit up. Brilliant, he whispered. Absolutely brilliant. He sat back, studying me with new intensity. Mr. Chen, what are your plans for this technology? I want to develop it further, I said. Scale it up, prove its potential in real-world applications. But I need funding, resources. Eric nodded slowly. What would you say to full access to Google's quantum computing resources, a dedicated research team, complete technical support? My heart started pounding. Are you saying? I'm saying we're very interested in acquiring your technology, Mr. Chen. Very interested indeed. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. When you say very interested, he wrote a number on a piece of paper and slid it across the table. I looked at it and forgot how to breathe. The number had 9 zeros after it. That's just the initial offer, Eric said quietly. We can discuss terms, of course. But we want to move quickly on this. Your breakthrough, it's exactly what we've been looking for. I stared at the number, my vision blurring slightly. It was more money than I'd ever imagined. More than enough to prove everyone wrong. To show my family that all those years in the garage hadn't been a waste. But something held me back from saying yes immediately. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the memory of all those nights working alone, believing in my vision when no one else did. I need to think about it, I heard myself say. Eric raised an eyebrow, but nodded. Of course. But please understand, Mr. Chen, you're not the only one working in this space. We're interested in your technology because you've solved a crucial problem. But others are close. I can give you 48 hours to decide. I gathered my prototype with trembling hands, barely remembering how I got out of the building. In my car, I sat staring at nothing, the piece of paper with the 90 number burning a hole in my pocket. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister. How'd the meeting go? Another bust? I started to type a response, then stopped. No, they needed to hear this in person. All of them. I started the car, my mind racing. Dinner at my parents' house was in a few hours. For once, I was actually looking forward to it. Sometimes success is the sweetest revenge.